Hello, Salam alaikum. This is CHIFAA podcast episode 4. Illness is not a metaphor. Sontag, the body, and the right to say what hurts. Sontag, illness and metaphor. When Susan Sontag was first treated for stage 4 breast cancer in 1970s, her doctors did not expect her to live. She did. And out of that survival came not a triumphant war story, but a strange, fierce little book, Illness as a Metaphor. In it, Sontag makes a simple but uncompromising claim: illness is not a metaphor. The most truthful and the healthiest way to be ill, she writes, is to resist metaphoric thinking as much as possible, to refuse the myths, the curses, the moral judgments that cling to diseases like cancers and AIDS. In our last episode, we stayed with Radwa Ashur's refusal to turn illness into heroic battle. Today, we place that refusal alongside Sontag's. What happens when we strip away the metaphors, especially the maliciously ones, and look at illness as illness in women's lives, in their bodies, in their clinics here and across the global south? The metaphors we carry. Sontag shows us that metaphors do not just decorate illness, they distort it. When we say cancer is an invasion or speak of war on cancer, we quietly turn the body into battlefield and doctor into generals fighting an enemy inside us. The patient's agency shrinks. Our body becomes terrain. She is especially suspicious of psychological explanations. The idea that cancer is caused by repressed anger or that illness is a punishment for emotional failure. This kind of thinking blames the sick for their own disease and leaves them feeling they are somehow deserved. Think of how often women hear that stress or personality or negative energy brought illness upon them. Sontag's response is blunt. These metaphors kill. They delay treatment, they encourage magical thinking, and they add shame on top of suffering that was already hard enough to carry. Reef, Sontag's own illness story. Susan Sontag did not write illness as metaphor from safe theoretical distance. Her son, David Reef, later described how she forced a third and final diagnosis, myelodysplastic syndrome, a precursor to a fast lethal leukemia. By then, she had already survived advanced breast cancer and uterine sarcoma. She was, as he put it, mutilated but alive. Reef writes that his mother could never accept death as something neutral or natural. Mortality felt to her as unjust as murder. She was willing to undergo brutal treatments, including a risky bone marrow transplant at 71, because she could not imagine giving into what she saw as the imperative of dying. And yet, even as she refused death, she also refused to easy consolations of metaphor. What she wanted, Reef suggested, was simply time and the chance to keep writing. Then tension, the refusal of death without romanticizing illness, sits at the heart of Sontag's work. And it sits at the heart of this episode too. Sontag, Disability Studies and the Harm of Metaphor. Recent work in disability studies has just turned to Sontag and argued that she offers something we've partially forgotten. Her premise is stark. Metaphors around illness do harm. They are not just hurtful. They reshape policy, medicine, and everyday decisions in a way that can be deadly. Disability scholars point to phrases like blind to reality, dead to reason, a lame argument, language that turn disabled people into symbols of social collapse or moral failure. Sontag's intervention is to push us to pare down our metaphors, expose them, use them up and retire the most damaging ones, especially the military metaphors that make it easier to justify authoritarian responses to disease. When we describe a pandemic as a war, as Sontag warned long before COVID-19, we make it easier to accept emergency powers, unequal care, and the idea that some lives are simply expendable casualties of the fight, grounding this in North African and global South reality. If metaphors shapes policy and medicine in the global North, they shape stigma and silence in North Africa and across Africa and the global South. Illness can be framed as a spiritual test, a family shame, a private burden not to be spoken of in public. When that happens, women lose not only access to accurate information, they lose their right to describe their own pain in plain language. Sontag's insistence on demetaphosing care demand of disability studies. Recognize the agency of patients, especially those whose bodies are already heavily managed. Disabled people, chronically ill people, cancer patients, women whose choices are routinely second-guessed. For our community here, that means refusing both the heroic warrior script and the shaming, the moralizing one, reclaiming language and agency. So what would it mean to demilitarize the body in our language? Following Sontag, it might mean speaking of illness as a serious disease, but not just a disease, not a curse, not a punishment, not a test of character. It might mean making room for sentences like, I'm ill and I'm frightened. I do not want to fight. I want to rest. Without translating any of that into failure, demilitarizing illness is not surrender. It is an ethics of description. It is the choice to let women in North Africa, in the global South, everywhere, name their bodies without carrying the weight of society's myths. It is a way of returning to them what Sontag fought for in her work, in her life, the right to suffer, the right to seek care, and the right to speak about illness in truth. This is something I carry with me personally, and something that also shapes my work with CHIFAA. I'm Maha Jouini, founder of CHIFAA, and perhaps this is the thought I want to leave with you today. Our bodies are not battlefields. Illness is not a moral failure, and healing does not require us to become warriors. Sometimes healing begins with being allowed simply to be human. But our conversation about illness does not end here. In the next episode, we will move from the language we use to describe illness to the technology we are building to treat it. We will explore cancer treatment in the fourth industrial revolution and ask what happens when artificial intelligence enters technology room. Can AI help us detect cancer earlier, personalize treatments, and improve the experience of care? And as these technologies advance, who is represented in the data? Whose bodies are understood by these systems, and who risks being left behind? These questions are particularly important for women in Africa, Middle East, and the Global South, where the future of AI in healthcare cannot simply be important, it must also be shaped by our realities, our languages, and our experiences. That is where we will continue our conversation. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of yourself and your bodies. Thank you. Bye-bye.